The following podcast is a presentation of This Is Infamous. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to a new edition of Intelligent Wrestling Conversation, the wrestling podcast that takes logic, reason, and some intelligence, puts things into perspective in the world of professional wrestling. I'm your host, Billy Donnelly, as always, who you can find at joeblow.com, and this is Infamous, and a pretty packed show to get through this week, as once again, the brand extension continues to move forward. We get closer and closer towards SummerSlam, and the pieces are put in place, or start to be put in place, as we assemble the puzzle that will get to, I guess, the WrestleMania of the summer, as the WWE sort of considers it in the grand scheme of things. I'm going to talk about this week's Raw, going to talk about this week's SmackDown, after last week's debut of both shows in the new era. So we'll see if Raw continued to make solid progress, and we'll see if SmackDown was able to recover from their very shaky beginning. So I guess the place that we'll get into right out of the gate is we'll start with Monday Night Raw. Last week, Monday Night Raw had an absolutely stellar kickoff under the reign of Mick Foley and Stephanie McMahon. Absolutely stellar. Couple of potholes here and there, but little minor ones, just some tiny bumps in the road. Otherwise, by and large, a really fantastic 3 hours. A lot of fantastic wrestling. And on top of that, the 3 hours didn't feel like a chore. It wasn't a slog. It was actually 3 hours that moved fairly fluidly and smoothly, which is what you need out of a 3-hour show. You don't want 3 hours to feel like 3 hours. You want 3 hours to feel like an hour and 45 minutes or so, and leave the audience wanting more. And I thought last week that's what they were sort of able to do. I think the longer matches help make the segments feel smaller, if you catch my drift. You're still getting X amount of segments over the course of a 3-hour show. But with the longer matches, you're taking 2, sometimes 3 segments and condensing them into one longer piece. So as a result, you're getting a much more satisfying payoff, and you're feeling like you're invested in something that matters, that's meaningful. So I thought that was one of the strengths of last week's show, and this week I thought it moved once again pretty easily. And on top of that, most of the segments, once again, there's always going to be something that's not for you, but I thought most of the segments serve some greater purpose in the grand scheme of what Monday Night Raw is trying to do as an individual, distinct, unique brand. I want to get into some of the highlights. There's really not a lot of negatives this week on Raw again, which to me was really is encouraging. As somebody who has really been teetering on the brink of just saying, fuck it, I don't want to watch this show anymore. I thought the last few weeks of Raw have been solid efforts that has sort of rejuvenated the brand. Makes it feel alive, energetic. And this week on the show, I thought there were some things they did remarkably well. One thing I have I'm going to take some slight issue with, and I'll get into it in a minute, but I thought there were some things that they did remarkably well to help move forward as we head into August and towards SummerSlam, the road to SummerSlam. Now, number one, coming off of last week's amazing victory by Sasha Banks to capture the WWE Women's Championship in a unbelievable match with Charlotte, which is to be expected when you take those two women and you put them in the ring together. But I thought allowing Sasha Banks to then kick off Monday Night Raw was a fresh start. And we've sort of seen this now in recent weeks, which is not the same old thing. Not Stephanie McMahon coming out and welcoming us to Monday Night Raw, or the champ coming out and cutting an extended promo. It doesn't feel the same, like a formula every week. Yeah, they're still opening up with a promo. Yeah, they're still sending somebody out to the ring, but it's a different face. It's not the same person saying the same thing, and then we get the same interruption, and it's not that anymore. I mean, it is to an extent because we did have some interruptions here in this opening segment, but by sending somebody else out to kick off the show with whatever it is that they're involved with, that sort of variety and diversity is only beneficial to the show because it allows the WWE some leeway creatively to do some different things. And by the same token, it forces the audience to have to watch every second because they don't know what they might miss. Previously, you could have not tuned into Raw until like 8:20 because you would have said, well, I know how it's going to start. And if there's anything really important that I may have missed, if I come in right after the commercial break, they're just going to give me the replay. They'll give me the highlights, so I don't really need to watch the opening segment. But here you're getting some fresh faces. And as a result, you're being sent the message that they are important. They mean something. Have Charlotte come out and confront Sasha Banks after their match. That quickly establishes the women's division on Raw as meaningful. Chris Jericho comes out, and I mean, it's sort of a weird turn, but all right, let's see where it's going. And then for Enzo Amore to come out and be involved, that is a big moment for Enzo Amore. Now, you may scratch your head and then say, well, where's Big Cass? But that's a big moment for Enzo Amore. That's a big moment to let people know, as if they didn't already, that Enzo Amore counts on Monday Night Raw. He's not just a background player. Enzo Amore's in the segment to open up Monday Night Raw. That's a big deal. So I thought that, in terms of the presentation, trying to switch things up, trying to shake up, now shuffle the deck, is shake up dice, I guess. I don't know, trying to shake things up in order to make things feel fresh, feel different. My kudos to the creative team and Vince McMahon over there. Credit where credit is due over what is being done with Monday Night Raw right now. Which is having listened to the criticism and now changing direction some, altering the product some, hearing constructive criticism and applying solutions to make it better. You know, I think the commentating team on Raw right now is top notch, and it's only been 2 weeks. I cannot overstate my love for Corey Graves as the heel commentator. I cannot, because of what he brings to the table. And I think because of that sort of adversarial dynamic he is now bringing, it has made Michael Cole better than he's been in years. And once again, with a focus on what's happening in ring, on selling the performers, selling the action, selling the matches, selling the personal issues, selling the feuds, and not selling movies or networks or upcoming programming on the WWE network or subscriptions. With that set aside for the right moments, and the focus being on what's happening in the ring, it has allowed the audience to now once again become invested in what they're seeing. The overall presentation of Monday Night Raw right now feels rejuvenated and strong. It's like Raw took a Viagra and they're just bursting to unload something. I'm really psyched about what's happening with Monday Night Raw right now. All right, let me talk about a couple of individual things that are key, because I think they're real big centerpieces for what they want to do as they head towards SummerSlam. So we are going to get a rematch between Sasha Banks and Charlotte. I'm sure it's going to be off the charts. They're going to get a lot of time. It's going to be in front of a rowdy and raucous Brooklyn crowd. New York crowds are notorious for being hot crowds into it. So I imagine those two women will get the respect and support they deserve. I think they're going to blow it out of the park. Maybe better than what we saw on Monday Night Raw last week. Maybe on the level of what we caught in the San Jose WrestleMania house show, the NXT show last year at WrestleMania 31. So I look forward to that. I want to talk about the main event, though. Or at least the main event from the Raw standpoint and how that's concerned. Because last week we crowned a challenger, or an opponent rather, for Seth Rollins heading into the main event of SummerSlam to compete for the first ever WWE Universal title. The name will take some getting used to. I'm very curious to see what the belt looks like. But with Seth Rollins squaring off against Finn Balor, who got a major rub last week, winning his fatal 4-way match as well as a one-on-one against Roman Reigns, which really catapulted him up the stratosphere, the WWE stratosphere, up the hierarchy, and let the audience know that this guy, fresh on the scene, is somebody to pay attention to. And I've heard all sorts of complaints this week from the IWC about, oh my God, Finn Balor shouldn't be pushed that quickly. Not that quickly. He's got to earn it first. Not that quickly. How quickly they turned on Finn Balor is unbelievable. And I wonder, why not that quickly? Isn't that a way to really build a guy right out of the gate if you do it carefully and well? Is you thrust him right up the chart and have him make an immediate impact that people take notice? Kevin Owens came out on his first night and beat John Cena. And nobody complained. Nobody said, oh, Kevin Owens is being pushed too quickly. Why? Because it was against John Cena? Have these guys come in, square off against established, well-known, credible opponents. And this is one of those cases where victories matter. A win over Roman Reigns matters. So in a few short weeks, I'm very interested to see how Finn Balor continues to be built. As I thought there was an interesting interaction with Seth Rollins here, where Seth Rollins basically said he was Finn Balor before Finn Balor was Finn Balor in the WWE Universe sense. And this will be another case as he trumps him, so to speak, in order to become the Universal Champion. The they're not overexposing Finn Balor at this point, which is good. Came out, he had 2 matches on his opening night, showed what he can do in the ring, and now just sort of pull him back a little bit. I'm very curious to see if they will unleash the demon at SummerSlam for people who haven't seen it, because I think that's an incredible way to get him over. We may see him sort of pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed in the next coming weeks, which leads him to go to that next level. Because I know you want to save it and you don't want to try it out all the time, and they tried to do that in NXT, which was to save it only for major events so that it was special. And I think this early on, competing for the Universal Championship, I think that is a case where Finn Balor can be made special in the eyes of the WWE Universe by rolling out this very unique thing he has going for him with the paint and the persona. Because let's remember, not all WWE fans, especially the casual, are tuning in to watch NXT. They've never seen that side of Finn Balor. They've never really seen Finn Balor, period. And the WWE is working carefully to sort of build him up as we get into him. But so something like the demon, they're not aware of. So if it happens, it's going to be a surprise. And you're going to have to condition people to not expect it every night. But at SummerSlam, in front of that crowd, which is typically informed, to roll out the demon may just blow the roof off the Barclays Center. Something to consider there. But one of the things that I wasn't crazy about this week in terms of that setup for SummerSlam was then lining up a match for Seth Rollins on Monday Night Raw versus Sami Zayn. Now, I don't know what the plans are for Sami Zayn right now. Sami Zayn, I believe, can be that sort of main event underdog. He's very likable. He's very personable. He's got a unique moveset. He's athletic in the ring. He sells remarkably well, and he pulls the crowd into his matches. Everything that you want in a talent that you can build around. And so I looked at Seth Rollins versus Sami Zayn as a waste of a potential main event match down the road. You don't need to throw Sami Zayn under the bus for Seth Rollins as he heads towards the main event of SummerSlam. And I'm not going to go out and say Sami Zayn got buried, because that's not even close. It's not even the right terminology. But I think while Seth Rollins is competing for that WWE Universal Championship, and a loss to him by Sami Zayn doesn't necessarily hurt Zayn all that much, it also doesn't help him in the way that you might want it to, or in the way that it could help someone else. Let me propose something here. Let me do just a little bit of fantasy booking in the moment. Because I think finding something right now for Sami Zayn to do and finding something for Kevin Owens to do that doesn't involve one another is going to be tricky for creative, because they haven't figured out how to divert those paths yet. But what if you have Seth Rollins concerned a little bit about Finn Balor, distracted by Finn Balor, off his game as a result of Finn Balor? Maybe he's looking ahead to Finn Balor even. Maybe he's looking ahead to SummerSlam. Maybe he's looking ahead to what he feels is the inevitability of being crowned the first ever WWE Universal Champion. And in doing so, instead of sticking Seth Rollins in a match against Sami Zayn, maybe you find somebody a little bit lower down the card to step into the ring with Seth Rollins. Now, I'm not talking about somebody way down the card. I'm more talking about somebody that the crowd might be able to get behind. I don't know who it is, as once again I try to sort through the rosters and keep them straight. But somebody like a Zack Ryder, or of Zack Ryder's ilk, would be perfect in this situation. Somebody that the crowd wants to believe in. Somebody that the crowd easily rallies behind. Somebody that the crowd hopes can break through and get to the next level. I think even somebody like Cesaro would be too much for that spot, but somebody below that. And what you do is you stick them in that match with Seth Rollins, and you have them take them to the limit. Why? Because Seth Rollins is overlooking them. Seth Rollins thinks he's got this in the bag. Seth Rollins is focused on SummerSlam. And Finn Balor, this is it's a warm-up. He doesn't even really need to try, except maybe he does. And you have that opponent push him to the limit. You have that opponent have the match of their life. You have that opponent come within inches of defeating the number one draft pick of Monday Night Raw. Inches from beating the number one contender for the Universal Championship. Inches from beating Stephanie McMahon's pet project and someone she considers the future franchise and face of the WWE. And you give that opponent a star-making match that instantly elevates them up the card. Because it doesn't necessarily hurt Seth Rollins if you tell the story right. And all it does is help whoever it is that takes him to the limit move up. Move up into another level of the WWE and the Monday Night Raw brand. You know, we talk a lot about sort of wrestling history, and I've been hearing sort of Jim Ross talking a lot lately on his podcast, and the one match that he brings up frequently is, at least in recent history, is the Jeff Hardy ladder match on Monday Night Raw versus The Undertaker. Now, say what you want. That was a match that pushed Jeff Hardy to the next level. That made Jeff Hardy somebody Now, he was already, tag team champion and whatnot, but this was a chance for him to carve his own path as a singles competitor. And I think that opportunity exists for somebody else. And it could be anybody. I mean, it could be Jack Swagger. If you position it and you tell the story right. I think somebody like Neville would be great in that moment. Because they can work a style with Seth Rollins that's exciting in that type of match. I think somebody like I mentioned Zack Ryder already, even though he's on the other show, but even somebody like Curtis Axel. And once again, you present it as, it's just a warm-up, just sort of a tune-up, a sparring match for Seth Rollins in a number of ways. So I think something like that would go a longer way towards building interest towards SummerSlam, creating some doubt in Seth Rollins, maybe scaring some sense into Seth Rollins. As once again, he thinks it's going to be sort of a walk in the park. Because once again, mystery, uncertainty, surprise, unpredictability, these are the things that you want in your show. When I sit down and I see Seth Rollins versus Sami Zayn at this point in time, I know that Sami Zayn doesn't have a chance of winning that match. Even if you put Rollins in there with somebody like a Zack Ryder, I still think that. But if you tell the story well enough, slowly, you start to get me believing, what if? What if? Could this be the night? Could something different happen? This is a new era. Who knows? So just something for the WWE to possibly think about. Don't just march towards SummerSlam. You still have weeks in between that you got to fill with some story. And I find that's typically one of the weaker parts of the WWE build recently, is that they know how to set up the matches. They know how to sort of move away from a pay-per-view or special event, but getting there, they have trouble telling that tale for the number of threads they want at the pay-per-view. So, get creative. This is your opportunity to really, really push the limits and see what you can do with your show. Take Monday Night Raw out for a spin, hit the gas, and let's see where it goes. But don't play it so safely. You don't have to play it so safely. Following that, I thought they had a really good segment with Brock Lesnar and Randy Orton. Now, the interesting dynamic in that match for SummerSlam is that these two gentlemen are on different shows. Randy Orton has been drafted to SmackDown. Brock Lesnar has been drafted to Monday Night Raw. And as a result, you got to figure out a way to promote their match at SummerSlam without both guys being on the card the same night, being in the locker room the same night. And I thought what they managed to do here on Monday Night Raw is once again bring in unpredictability. Because you weren't sure what was going to happen. You thought maybe you could maybe know. But until they pulled the trigger on you, you didn't know for sure. So Paul Heyman comes out with Brock Lesnar and once again cuts another amazingly great Paul Heyman promo. selling up the match, selling up Randy Orton and the RKO, and how it's not going to matter because he's facing Brock Lesnar. And there's no way that Randy Orton, even in that moment, that split second where anything could happen, there's no way Randy Orton will ever get anywhere close enough to Brock Lesnar to be able to turn an RKO on him and put him away in an instant. Really tremendous upsell job by Paul Heyman, which is to be expected as he is a master of this craft. But in laying it on so thick, once again, dealing with the inevitability that Brock Lesnar is going to thrash Randy Orton at SummerSlam, Randy Orton emerges from nowhere, hits an RKO out of nowhere, and leaves Brock Lesnar on the mat, on the canvas, having tasted that split-second weapon that could potentially put away any opponent at any time, in any position, over the course of a match. Really, really well executed. Because you would hope that it wouldn't just be Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman standing around talking, or Paul Heyman standing around talking while Brock Lesnar just stands around. You would hope it would be something more than that. And now we got a taste of the contact. And then when we carried over into SmackDown, when Brock Lesnar came out and delivered an F5 to Randy Orton, and once again took their confrontation up to the next level. It's small increments. You go to the RKO, then you go to the F5. Now you got to figure out where it goes next. Or is it going to come down a little bit before it goes back up again? Takes you on the roller coaster ride. But I thought right out of the gate it was important. Because we've been talking about this match, and I've been saying to myself, Brock Lesnar versus Randy Orton, I mean, on paper it sounds fine, but is there anyone on the WWE roster who you could stick in the ring with Brock Lesnar who would then come across as a credible opponent? I mean, remember, this is a guy, failed drug test or not, who still got into a UFC octagon and fought legitimately another opponent. In the WWE, Brock Lesnar is second to none. There is no other opponent to get into the ring with Brock Lesnar who you would believe could defeat Brock Lesnar in a fight. But here in this instance with Randy Orton hitting the RKO like that, now there's some unpredictability. Now there's some doubt. Now there's some mystery as to what happens at SummerSlam if Randy Orton catches Brock Lesnar with that move. And by establishing how quick it could happen, how suddenly it can happen, how out of nowhere it could happen on Monday Night Raw this week, you've intensified the match, and you have left your audience wondering, what if? And that's where you want them. You want them in the palm of your hand. You want them not sure whether we're going up, down, left, or right. So once again, my hat's off to the Monday Night Raw creative team, Vince McMahon included, since you know he's involved. Because I thought this was another segment where they just hit it out of the park. All right, I want to talk about one other thing on Monday Night Raw before we touch on SmackDown. And that is now the use of Roman Reigns. it is quite clear that, particularly following the wellness policy violation, the bloom is off of Roman Reigns' rose a bit. Not being pushed as a top babyface right now. Not doubling down on sort of shoving him down people's throat, as we've been saying for months and months and months. Roman Reigns is in need of a rebuild. A reboot. A refocus. A reimagining. Basically a re-everything. Are there people who have been ride or die with Roman Reigns for a while? Sure. But you got to rebuild his value in terms of the overall collective WWE universe. And I thought what they have been doing right now is brilliant. To once again get people on the side of Roman Reigns. And that is to line him up as a challenger for Rusev and the U.S. title. Now, they've been doing a tremendous job of rebuilding Rusev's value. And if we're going to get Roman Reigns and Rusev at SummerSlam, I wonder how that is going to sort of resolve itself, because I don't know that I want to see either one of those two guys lose. I think having Roman Reigns lose to Rusev sort of hurts Roman Reigns, builds Rusev up, and it puts some value into the U.S. title. By the same token, I also don't want to see Rusev lose, because I think he's come a long way from really the dip they took with him after he had that undefeated streak for over a year. But I think what they've done has been brilliant with Roman Reigns, because in order to get a positive reaction for Roman Reigns, in order to rebuild Roman Reigns as a babyface, they are now setting him up to square off with a heel who nobody likes. This isn't like the cool heel Seth Rollins, who has some street cred, and as a result, sort of smart marks gravitate towards him. This isn't Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar. Roman Reigns and anybody else. Roman Reigns versus John Cena. Nobody where it could clearly be divided. This is Roman Reigns against a true heel in Rusev, who no one's going to cheer. You don't cheer for Rusev. I mean, you can, I guess, if you're an asshole. But this is the anti-American holding the United States title and rubbing everyone's face in it. Talking about how amazing he is and a true American hero. You can't cheer for that guy. I mean, I guess you can if you're Bulgarian or Russian. But if you're stateside, you don't cheer for that guy. So what is your alternative? I guess you're going to have to cheer for Roman Reigns. To defeat this loudmouth blowhard putting down the United States. It's so smart. I mean, they did it to a certain degree with John Cena. Everybody rallied against John Cena versus Rusev because you couldn't cheer for Rusev. And they're going back to the well with Roman Reigns. It couldn't have happened at a better time. Roman Reigns' stock is down. This is a way to build him back up. This is also a way to change perception of him in the eyes of some. Maybe they start letting go of the past. Start embracing the now. So I thought, once again, interesting use with Roman Reigns. I think they're on the right track with him. I'd like to see them keep this going. because I think there's a future ahead of this where Roman Reigns can once again be a solid babyface. Because then if you can get him there, and then once again, unpredictability, then you turn him to the heel that everybody has wanted him to be for a while. When nobody sees it coming, because now they come full circle and embraced him as a babyface. Oh, it's got to be beautiful. So let's see how this thing plays out. But I think there's a lot of potential right now with what they're doing with Roman Reigns. All right, let's move over to SmackDown, because there's sort of one real thing I want to touch upon, and then just a couple of other things. Number one, let me get into the other things first, which is sort of the overall presentation of SmackDown. I thought SmackDown had a real rough start last week, and I think there's still some issues that the show has to deal with, and the sooner they can hammer these problems out, the better. Number one is the time of the show is going to prove to be a problem, because the show is only 2 hours. I like that they added this Talking Smack show, post-show afterwards, sort of add some analysis and whatnot. Once again, adds another level to what they're doing on SmackDown. But I think the 2-hour time frame is going to hurt them in the respect that they're following Monday Night Raw, which is 3 hours the night before. They're competing head-to-head against Monday Night Raw to try and be the superior brand. But Raw has the extra hour to do so much more with. And that's before we've even gotten the Cruiserweight division added to Monday Night Raw officially yet. So what SmackDown is trying to do is they have a lot of story, a lot of character work, a lot of building that they need to then cram into 2 hours. And I don't know right now that they found the right balance to make that work. As a result, everything feels sort of rushed. And it feels like they're trying to shove a lot into this 2-hour bag. And building building matches for pay-per-views, building personal issues, making unestablished characters matter again, or matter for the first time. The debut of American Alpha versus the Vaudevillains, I thought that was pretty good. But you have, I think, the women's division getting the shafts more than anybody. They had 2 segments set up with the women. Number one would be Ava Marie faking an injury in her supposed match with Becky Lynch, which is meant to sort of get heel heat on Ava Marie, who I think can get heel heat on her own as it is. But it feels like a segment that doesn't quite come together execution-wise. And then you also have Natalya's attack on Carmella, which feels rushed. So you have a number of, throughout the show, you had a number of like attacks. Like unseen attacks, backstage attacks, behind the back attacks. A lot of just those, which work when they're not your entire show. You got to use them sparingly. So, they're still trying to figure out how to make this whole thing work in 2 hours with all the assets that they have. SmackDown, I think, is going to take a little bit more time to get in order. I don't know. We're going to have to see how this thing shakes out. I'm willing to give them some rope and see. But the first 2 weeks, let's just say, I have not been impressed with the show that was supposed to be the wrestling show that I thought would really sort of blow the doors off. Been more impressed with Monday Night Raw, which has been the surprise for me. But I thought the highlight of SmackDown Live on Tuesday was the main event with Dolph Ziggler and Bray Wyatt. So first off, you have this opening segment with Dean Ambrose and Dolph Ziggler, both cutting tremendous promos on each other to build towards this match for SummerSlam, where Dolph Ziggler has earned the right to be the number one contender, will challenge for the WWE Championship against Dean Ambrose. Let's remember, Dolph Ziggler, sort of a damaged brand. Had some ups a couple years ago, been down ever since. Every once in a while, he gets sort of up and he gives you hope, and then they just suck him back down. So as a result, you look at Dolph Ziggler and you go, I don't know that he's a credible main eventer. I don't know that he's the guy you want in that spot at SummerSlam. Granted, I'm proud that they've given him that spot. I think he's earned it. I think he's been through some shit in the WWE to come out on the other side here. And for anybody who's knocking Dolph Ziggler, get your head up your ass. Because this dude has proven that he belongs there. And it's more frustrating that it's taken the WWE this long to finally realize and understand that. But as a result, they got a lot of repair work to do in order to get Dolph Ziggler ready for SummerSlam as a legitimate contender for the title against Dean Ambrose, who is freshly crowned as the champion. So you have this sort of match, though. You have Bray Wyatt come out and issue a challenge. Issue a challenge to Dolph Ziggler to face him on SmackDown Live with the position in the main event at SummerSlam at stake. Now, you would look at this and say, why would Dolph Ziggler ever do that? It makes no sense. He's got a title shot in hand. How many times have we seen people have title shot in hand, let pride and ego get in the way, and they piss away their opportunity, and we look at them and we say, how stupid are they? You never want your hero to be stupid or do stupid things. You don't want your babyface to look foolish, to look like an idiot. And starting off the show with that challenge thrown out there and then Dolph Ziggler accepting it, my head immediately went into my hands. Immediately, it just face palmed. And I said, here we go with this shit again. Because it looked like a way to have Dolph Ziggler kick off SmackDown Live last week with a surprising victory in the main event and then pull a bait and switch with Bray Wyatt to have a more conventional match lined up for SummerSlam between Ambrose and Wyatt. But that's not what they did. That's not what happened. More kudos this week to the WWE creative team, this time on the SmackDown side, for subverting my expectations. Because they took the predictable path that they've been traveling for months, which is that, clearly Bray Wyatt is going to use some nefarious means to screw Dolph Ziggler out of his chance. And once again, we'll feel bad for Dolph Ziggler. Bray Wyatt will be in the main event. And, that's sort of the way it goes. And we could see that happening. And it makes sense. But instead here, they actually had Dolph Ziggler get that victory over Bray Wyatt. Prove that he belongs in the main event at SummerSlam. Prove that he is a legitimate number one contender by using the threat of Bray Wyatt against us. By using the expectations that Dolph Ziggler always somehow loses in the end. I thought it was really solid storytelling. And really has me intrigued by what's to come in the weeks ahead between Dolph Ziggler, Dean Ambrose, and now this sort of wild card in the equation, a hurt Bray Wyatt, a ruthless Bray Wyatt. Because now they've managed to rebuild the value of two people, or are in the midst of rebuilding the value of two. Not only Dolph Ziggler, but also Bray Wyatt. And the loss, we always say, wins and losses matter. The loss from Bray Wyatt to Dolph Ziggler doesn't necessarily hurt Bray Wyatt, because what it does is it helps rebuild the value of Dolph Ziggler as a main eventer for SummerSlam, and it builds some value in Bray Wyatt as an angry outsider who is somehow going to make his mark on this feud. I don't know that it's going to be three-way or triple threat, but I do know that we now don't know what this means for the inclusion of Bray Wyatt and the Wyatt family as it pertains to the main event. So, look, overall, really good work this week on WWE programming between Monday Night Raw and SmackDown. I think SmackDown still has some work, but some progress I thought was made this week. Monday Night Raw, let me say that again. Monday Night Raw, another excellent show. SummerSlam is coming, and I'm really interested. They're laying some solid ground. I hope it continues. But this week, another week where they had a good show on tap. All right, that's it for this week's show. I'm going to give you the go-home cue, and we're going to get the hell out of here. So I want to thank you once again for downloading, streaming, tuning into this week's episode, this week's edition of Intelligent Wrestling Podcast. Make sure you get us set up for yourself, however you get your podcast set up. Podcast can be found basically anywhere and everywhere the podcast can be found. So I know you found us here today. I don't know how you did it, but whatever your preferred method is, we're there. iTunes, Stitcher, Blueberry, SoundCloud, Google Play. You can find Intelligent Wrestling Conversation out there in all of them. So just make sure you subscribe to the show. That is very important so that you never miss a show. It's always delivered directly to you. And we also ask that just you like and rate and comment wherever the show is. Let us know what kind of job we're doing. Give some feedback. It helps with the positioning of the show. So just take those couple of seconds to do that job for us. And I will greatly appreciate you putting forth that effort. Social media, there's a bunch we ask that you follow. So Twitter, at the IWC Show, at the IWC Show on Twitter. That will once again also let you know, inform you that a brand new episode has come out, so you can keep track of it that way. At Tis Infamous, that's for the mothership. This is Infamous, which is the host of this show. That's our home. So for all the good content that goes up there, make sure you follow us at Tis Infamous and myself at Infamous Kid, Kidd. For all my random ramblings and musings, my stream of consciousness put into the written word in 140 characters or less. Follow me on Twitter as well. Over on Facebook, 2 pages, facebook.com/tisinfamous, facebook.com/bullythekid. Always interesting discussion threads for you to take part in and participate. So just jump right in that, throw yourself into it wholeheartedly. You have a good time and meet some interesting people. And look, if you want to email me, theiwcshow@gmail.com, theiwcshow@gmail.com. Got any questions you want to ask? We can maybe answer them on the show. I will read all through them. Send me something interesting though, and I promise I will personally look at every single word that you send me. So theiwcshow@gmail.com. I have been your host, Billy Donnelly. You can find my work regularly at joeblow.com, and this is Infamous. This has been Intelligent Wrestling Conversation. I'll be back next week talking more wrestling with whatever the hell else is happening as we get towards SummerSlam with the WWE. In the meantime, you have yourself a pleasant immediate future. I'm out for now. Peace. Intelligent Wrestling Conversation has been a podcast presentation of This Is Infamous.